alofa lava ma le soifua manuia I mamalu le au whafonga. Oa awa Dr. Ioana Mulipola, o le mental health nurse ua loa o na ngalue il matanga luenga le mental health I totonu o New Zealand. Maolo o ngalue o le whaiaonga I le nursing school I le University I Aukilani New Zealand. O le whaawa wina lenei o le talanoaga ma Fuimaono, Dr. Karl Pulotu Endemann, usi mai loa lau whafonga. O le ala o ke fifsilia kwa la Fuimaono, ona o le Fonofale Model e yele pou o le spirituality ia pou whaale anganga. Ai se ai e ka ua ile malamalama o kangaka le spirituality e malam inga ia malamalama ile mental health o kangaka.
Ke loa, Joanna, that was really made very pertinent to me. Ke mi leo le tsunami a.
Yeah.
Because o si mako workshop ma leoka, ngwhai I whaonga le malua ma o I whaonga le I whefo I le mewhikisi, whaonga le te onga mewhikisi I o I whefo I le mele I le vai.
Biula. Yeah.
O le fasili la maani ke ngwha mai, le fonofale, ko kele o whaifi au trend, le mea leo le spirituality. Because we're facing a challenge spiritual from a Christian point of view. Le kokelo o ngolo falsanga pa ule le ngale kua ile tsunami po se fasalanga po se punishment po se me fapenga. There was a lot of discussion about that. But yeah, spirituality is not just about Christian. Spirituality is about aingas, about land. It's about you know, like to me, when I looked at the name Fuimaono, because you know, Ono means there's 6 branches. I'm one of those branches. But where it goes back to each of those people, they've left their mark, not only their DNA, but what I believe is their spirit.
Mm-hmm.
And if I came in, aemaise came in le tsunami. It came in, okay, akai for ko kelo au necessary makua. Maisi au finagalo mai mkokua. They all au loko fonga bo e kale but they always, I remember one of them said, se kakuva veo ia pianga le apo fa le foi le bade e awele ko ke mo kele ya ka ai o pile o ke o aka fa mai se na ke mia ke fefe o mo ai ku ma mai ko fa I o ko ngelo look. So I think underneath all that there is a certain spirituality. And I think that's why you know, more spiritual I actually believe in that because they're my own families. So spirituality to me, whether you are efakasa, kakoliko, whatever, that's one part of it. But also, if le spirituality it's really more than that. It's also entrenched in the culture of Samoa.
Sa o le leila o saunoanga. Ile da weila o ke malamala maila o ia le spirituality. Ia mantua foi la le kako kumale angangu. Ile mela le o le vafe alo loai.
Na.
Mo le ava fatafata me fapea. Ele fa alo loa le si le vafe alo loai le. Ia o le singa koso le stress o le stangata. Ia Paul mela ia le tato anganu o le iaimo me o tua oi o feangainga. Ma le tapu. E tua o iai mea e le fesoasoani. Ona o le vafe alo loai. I la o la whaawinga ina o le spirituality po le whaaleanganga lea o te piki ai lau saunoanga le amatanga o talanoaga e luma mai le Christianity au tua atu le lena whaawai tato anganu. Ona a whaapela, that's spirituality to me. Ona ua lewa a fia le anganga o le tangata. A le fesoasoani fo I a inga po fe ese ai. Wa yei le totonu I bao tangata ma me whapea. Wa le eise fealo faninga ma se alofa. We wha le lama le wha alo. So it's basically o le spirituality pe se koa leo le kako culture.
Ngā konga.
Let
Let me just pick this up, because on a ponga whai mami, my former le whionga leoka, and we're doing some work in Polo Meale, mental health. E lunga la le vāwhara right, just to give an example. Whaonga le whaonga o le fofole wha Samoa. In more cases, mental health whaonga, and some cases were very hard, like sexual abuse, murder, and things like that. Le wha le leinga la leo le vā, whaonga le, how it takes time. But also the concept of the ifonga. Now, that is when you are hiforosa kangaka samo. It's in that. You can't separate that from spirituality. O le ifonga, as it is, no way for making to say, o makonge usase. We acknowledge le fonga le laham, o makufai ya o mako ainga. And it's the ainga that's referring to. If you think about it, the Fasamo for the culture, go back to that question of for the culture. Because if you look at it, there's also a safeguard in that. Because fufi oe mole ikonga. That you're saying is it's up to you now to accept it. Or mai fasioki oe faise mesisi ya oe. But in order to do that, how I interpret it, you got to go through the sacred thing of Samoa or the ikonga. Because it can backlash against you. Do you understand? So to me, when you say about culture, yele for four of Samoa, that's what I'm talking about. In the culture of Samoa, yele for four. Yele for four, because that's why I love that you're thinking about, the culture is the medicine.
E sa o le leia ua langa o lea la peila o le wata o le spirituality. E once everything o la ua so longa lei mea uma, o I loa le wawhea loa loa, I makausi lei le wawhea loa loa, ia e le whaki ngā e lesi loko lesi. Ma le mawhakia lesi o ngā winga o lesi kangaka, ia koe ngā me whapenga, ia la ua so longa leia. So there's a spirituality in that.
That's right.
That's right. O tesa e makwake le ale part o le spirituality, le mental health. I le to le mu o le mafaufau o le tangata.
Sorry, Anna, just that point. You see, sometimes how you get to you were well, and then you're developing anxiety, stress. Lama stress say for with stress, with le kausia, on all that. And if you could do that, you become depressed, or you hit it out. Now, the really thing is the spirituality is in all this way of thinking. It's about your role, coffee, or and everything else. I can't put it better than this. One of the heights of when I got the honorary from Masi, well, some people might think the Palangi thought, they're out. I was the first and all that kind of stuff. And I was really appreciative. But it needed to be said that although it's an honor, the greatest honor he was dying. To me, that is a spiritual thing. To me, the lafa kofa, and no amount of honor. It's the greatest honor that anyone could get. It bypass all the medals, all the other things, because he's saying goodbye to me. But it's also thanking me for looking after him. Now that to me is whether I be a kaulavi. That's the most spiritual thing. My father wasn't a very strong Catholic, nor am I. But to me, that was a moment that really then it was. I can't put a description except it's a feeling of great love and a great honor.
Yeah, sa'olele. So. Ono tāua umala o mental health nurses, O le tāua la leo le spirituality, I le mental health o kākou ka Samoa mal Pasifika. O le ala sau finagalo I le malama o isi tangata mai isi atu nuu I le tāua leo le o le spirituality ina i o tātou tangata.
I think for ngale ia take it away, go back to not just the mental health, but just to go back to the totality of a human being, because it's part and parcel of that human being. The mellow spirituality. It's not just. It's also about there might be some spiritual things like values about your relationship with other people, because it's all part of it. But to me, it's that's mental health. We don't because if a mental health person goes and have a heart condition from or mental will separate mental health also have a physical illness. Just like a physical person, they also have spiritual health. You know, it's to me, the mental health belongs to everybody, just the physical health. And everything else. Okay, I didn't think I answered your question, but to me, I can't sort of separate it.
Yeah.
It's always part of that, but it's especially in mental health. Mental health. See, most of the models that's been developed was developed in mental health. And why is it in mental health, but not the other? Was because we tend to look at things holistically.
Yeah.
Because when I did my general nursing, I did psychiatric nursing first for 3 years, then I did 2 years general in Auckland, my National Women's. It's very much part, obstetrics here, medicine's here, surgery. But I did, very well in general. And they said, well, how come you're only a psychiatric, you're only just mental? And I said, because that's what we were taught. It's about the totality of the person. And that's why, to me, it's a long way around to answer your question. But mental health, particularly spirituality, just as physical health, is also very important in mental health, because a lot of our people are dying from physical health in mental health because they're not being looked after very well.
Sa o le sa noanga o le winga o la o fesili Fuimaono o le ko pekala I le mafatianga o le mafaufau malangona. Lea lai ona afia tangata I le soifua o le mafaufau. Ia pela o le talanoa o le relationship mo malele te winga o le ba fe aloaloa I me whapea e leina manu ar finagalo le tangata. O lona winga I lau saunoanga ia ma le talanoaga e te le ala le se fesoasoani e te tauna ia tātou la ia tauna tātou fesoasoani I tātou clinician ia ele ni Samoa ele ni Pasifika. Ina ia o ina la I lātou I le tātou tū ma le anganu. Ina ia lātou I loa la le koa la lea walanga. Our culture is spiritual. And then o le mea lea leinga nga iei le totonu ngai finagalo isi ma le mawaise moe le mawaise to file mu. Ona o lawa misa maliska haka.
Well, let me give a good example. The condition there to talk la fionga leoka.
Yeah.
Because Samoa actually fio Samoa or makai, but she's a forensic psychiatrist.
Yeah.
E le mawhainga whai e leoka se case study. E le iei a inga.
Yeah.
A maka fo I le a inga ma NGOs. E le mawhai. E whala le kemi, I watched it, fo ngala a makasa bokalame, e whai mua fo ngale the client or the patient, pe how they want to do it. O isi wha pe ia makalas kako loku, o ia whai lako loku. Now, they say, but that's what the client, if it's truly patient-centered care, you go for the patient, not what you think. It's a very good. See, the trouble is, clinician, you worked in a psychiatric area or mental health. You mean, but we all respect people for going on, but the way you show it is very different. We show it very different. See, the vaega white. And to give you a good example of Loka, now, here's a person who has been locked up for 40-odd days, locked in seclusion. But, all these nurses have been saying, because they treat her as a dangerous Samoan man. But she brought him out. And for that time, when she started off, although he may still have a lot of mental health issue, disorder thinking, he was able to participate because and was able to do. He asked right questions and everything else. I have to say, Joanna, to me, we've got to be very careful about that because when I was talking last night, Samoa, she's a clinician for it. She understood it, just like you did. But there are some Samoa who don't understand it because they didn't practice it. So that's why you have to put those things, how do you put that into practice? See, I think you can. I think you can. You can put a lofa in the patient. You can see, you feel it. The vibes come out, the way they talk, the way they speak, the way they pace. And then you wonder, but the patients are very good and because they understand that worldview that you're coming from. So I believe that there are things that we've got to be careful about because only people who are familiar with it and practice it. Be careful. Be careful. Because have you practiced it? Oh, no, because we use therapeutic intervention. Because you may be, but you're nothing. You gotta be careful. Your pose, there's a very different way, Joanna. For me, it's about there are things that you can teach Samoa. A very basic level, sit down. Then there's the next level that you just like levels of competence. Then there's the expert, and then you've got the specialist area. Now, I say this to because I know your and also your background, so you understand it. But I will definitely, if I'm talking to somebody who I know doesn't speak Samoa or doesn't understand it, because they want to learn all these high things, but they can't. Because it's a lifelong practice. Yeah. It's a practice, Leona. We've got to be careful. It's a practice. You do it all the time. And then I also survive for my old and you know, the other one is because they're coming from a different space. And before that, you've got to know who the person is. So that to me is very important. But I also think if in power. But the problem with this is if they know until they're into trouble. If my life up here, my mula, you know, my kafa, mocho, my if you saw me, Yamak of Ikawa, like this is me. I can't put up. You can't let you see me. No, but what is said, though, Joanna, is the fact that it's our people who are suffering. Yeah. One of the key problems in mental health right now, in the 20-odd years, I know they still haven't changed the fact that if you're a Pacifica, you're more likely to be committed under the Mental Health or the Criminal Justice Act. You're more likely to be secluded, and you're more likely to be over-medicated. Yeah. It hasn't changed. So what you had to do is the cultural safety. That's another group. Remember, as nurses, we had the cultural safety movement, which is also for because I was also part of that. With Irihapati Ramsden, it's the safety of the patient from organizations. It's very simply, it's entering a hospital, education, or whatever organization that's been set up by other cultural group without you having to comply to their needs. That means you put your culture, your Samoa aside, and you learn all the parang. And if you think about it, Joanna, as nurses and and also as a university. Those universities are Palangi institutions. Only now you can do what you want to do because you've got the we all do that. But it's that finding your way back home. And that's a really big challenge for all of us. It's ku mause me ke fa I lo mo fa lo doctor yo ku mau lo im ku chief o lo ya ya mo na vale e fa la vale gangalma fa fa sa le fa ngu. That's it's you keep building it.
Yeah. Sa ole le ala so no te lo ole au nga foi le ole develop ole faunganga podcast. O se ava noa e whai loa I le tatoa atunu. Le tāua o le tūmaleanga nu le soifua maloloina aemaise le mafaufau. Ia o le tā whaingaluenga I totonu o le system. O le o tātau mo whaila so. Ia malama o tātau tangata. I me sauni o lai mantua o lai ia interpreters. Matangata o le e mawhaina o mai e whaamatala le ngase. Ia peila o meleng tā talanoa I core values o tātou le spirituality. Tu sala o mea na o le tate mana o I lenei talanoaga ina ia whaailoa le tātou atunu. O mea pitosili ia na tāua e awhia il soifua maloloina. A sa ili fofo ili whalmai. E te tau na malamalama vaega la o mea uma ia tau na malamalama ina ia amai ele tonga fitinga. E amai o le wa mai umai le healing mo le tangata. Ele o le mai o na o fuala au ele o ato otoa. O la ofisili ala I lau a fionga Fuimaono wa lewa na e galuega I mental health. O le aso finagalo I le stigma. Le mental health o le pe o le fia talanoa I tangata ona o le stigma o le mental health.
The reason for that stigma o le malamalama kangaka. O le malama Malaysia me e whongale e kwai. E whongale isa me for like a scapegoat. E kwai ilme for I maki ai. O le ngolo malai o ainga. It's that. E vavele kwai. I sa o ngaui o lakai. Lo malai e lakai. It's that kind of thing. But you see, the thing is, it's really part and parcel of it's not that. It's stigma is really about not understanding. But why I don't want to separate things. If you can stigmatize something, you separate it and then you put it away that I don't do that. It's just that way for those mental formation. It's part and parcel of you.
Yeah.
It's when people say stigmatize, you have to ask yourself, why am I like that? Why am I like? Pero la of hakukusali yona. Ye isi lak emi. Vave a mesa mo fafingi. Ise vave nga put down na isi fafingi lan. Ye la mo fafingi nga. La mea nga fai fama kay ingola la me ye kwa pek fafingi. Ngi hai fai ang kal penga. O la mo fai fa. Kaya lo pa la me fai fo nga kal fa. Ye king fa pai. O fa les fafingi. O me fa ke fai nga fai el. Fa eso sometimes we tend to internalize stigma. We internalize and then we project it to somebody else. So you have to say, I can't feel me. You personally, what's worse to me, ole stigma ole skan sa mo fa mai kai ngoi yala ni kwa pe ka ni me fa pe la me fa fo sa mo mai
yeah
e ke o fa la ko ka fa pe nga e mo o bla le me fa ngo fa ka fa pe nga ile me fa because why if I'm saying that then I'm saying about myself. That's how I work it. Because we know that we all stigmatize that, we all do that, but it's really about personal reflection. Samos kakalo, makongi lokupope. We also Rosalio and reflect. And part of your reflection is, well, you're not that great. Don't be so humble. You're not that great. Like, you're great. But it's the humbleness. There's a program, Children of the Migration, and it's now on television. Anyway.
Oh, yeah, I think I saw it. Yeah.
The part where they asked me, what do you think of this one? If you what do you think of God? Well, if I think God, because it always worries me because God is always depicted as a long-haired old man, blonde, blue eyes, sitting on a mountain top. And to me, that's a Samoan. Well, I don't think that's God for me. So what do you think God is? Well, if God is about charity, it's about love and compassion, then I believe God is a woman. And he said, looking along fai konga the fonga la makungo for the child. Not choking up because she was very open-minded. Then I said, but if I really had to be honest, I think she'd be a Samoan woman. But then I went on and said, but if I really am honest, I think God is a whawhawhinga.
Yeah.
Joanna, I really believe that. Because I didn't say that in jest, because God is in everybody.
Yeah.
It's in everybody. But it's not just people. It's in the air you breathe, because it's in the beauties in the air. That's why I believe. But my mother and I have this philosophy: the beauty in the giving is the beauty. If you give beauty out, you can always get beauty back.
Yeah.
So that's a kind of philosophy way to, for me, to the stigma that you took. Because throughout my life, it's not just mental health. I work in stigmatized area. But my own personal, as a Samoan, the racism, as a whawhine about the homophobia.
Yeah.
So I used to get it. But yet I always say those are the strongest thing about me.
Yeah.
But stigma and discrimination, I'm very familiar with it. And that's why I work in mental health.
Yeah. E sa o leila o noanga, ele mela le o le stigma la le o le mental health mai e le fia talanoa i ei tangata. E pe se mea e whaamu tusi lima, i e mea whaapea. Ia e toe alu alala u lo mafaufau I definition la le World Health Organization about what is mental health, what is mental illness. Ia tu mai la le definition ale World Health Organization I le mental illness. Le definition a kako o le wai research ma articles, what is mental health ia kako Samoa. Ia o le mental health, ia o le break, o le whaaloalo le whawhialoloa I pe your spirit, o le o mai o spirit, o ngā o mai e whaisea o ngā kangaka le wale whaaloalo, I mea whaapea. So, ia awa ia pe e related I mea e negative. I mea le mga uskangaka associate ai. Ia o laulol mea ngai le fia kalangoa iai kangaka, but really sa o leila sa noanga o le malamalama, what is mental health? What is mental illness? Ia o le ale causes, malamalama tangata I le winga. Ia mantua foi Fuimaono e iai isi peila o neurodivergent.
Yes.
E iai tangata e le se lako control. La lainga afia I le mental illness. Pe o le tangata sa iai se accidents la vea lo nao. Ia po o le tangata na ola mai ma le disorder. Ia le ADHD, autism, me whapena. It's something out of their control. Or I think malamalama leia tangata I aunga malpongai ma mea uma o le mental illness. Ia o laulo o le amwhai fuina whaititia ia le mea le o le stigma I le mental health ma mental illness.
Yeah, but Joanna, in every case that you mention, they always recite God.
Yeah.
That's when all those, whether you're neurodivergent, where there's God, it's God's children. And so even people like that, you see. And I think for Ngalia Calabar, I've seen some very horrific things. I served in the parole board, horrible things that people quiver. But you have to see beyond that and see God's. in order to cope with that. And there's always an answer.
Yeah.
I believe that.
Yeah. Sa o lei.
We have had incidents of, and some people you can change, Joanna. I believe there's very motivated. They just move on. They know all there's not discrimination. There's others who are a bit reluctant. And then there's other people, no matter what you do, they're not going to change their mind. You don't bother with them. You don't bother. Because it's just a waste of your time. Okay, you have to concentrate. It's the one that's very motivated, and the ones who are a bit scared that they just need your assistance. Look, this is what you do that's discriminatory. It's okay. It's just that you don't understand. You're on the side. So it's so. But to me, it's really the whole thing about mental health is about really bringing it into the open. Because as part, I think people's negativities of themselves, this is how I see it. How they view negativity is partly because they're negative themselves. And so they put those part of them as a negative part. When really it's part and parcel of your life. Everybody will go up and down. Everybody will do that. You know, and we have to address that, Joanna, because of suicide.
Yeah.
Is seeking things in or you know, all those kind of stuff. We have to address those kind of things because if I value oh, you're bad, you can't because they're God's children. I mean, it sounds, I don't want to sound preachy because I'm not a preachy person. But it's just that sometimes that's what really drives me because I've always worked in mental health. I prefer it. Although I did very well in general, I didn't. I worked in, because you just see people and the sadness. When Samoan patients were brought you know, cargo boats, and they changed their names, and I saw them. And their next of kin was the boat that they came on, whether it was Tofua, or Taveuni. You know, it things that those are the histories. So, and to me, Joanna, patients, but also my time, there were nurses, but they weren't psychiatric nurses, but they were enrolled nurses, there were nurse aides, but also more cooks and domestic staff. They were Pacific, and they were the ones that really helped you along. So who I am and things, it's all that work, and just these are people who just worked there and they believed that there was from their own cultural part. So I saw that in action, the lofa and what compassion can do.
Yeah,
you know. So
sa o le tāua o le alofa, o le caring, compassion, empathy. I nei mea umai vi tuti tonu o le galuega lea tātou tausoifua o le mental health. I le sa o le tausia ia se aoga o le tapu kalame i le whaatauaina la lea o le tātou talanoa i le mental health ma le mental illness ina ia mawhai ei ona address pe mawhai ei fo i ona whaititia le tusi lima ia po le stigma ia wa sa o le alau sau noanga a le lavale malama i se mea ia ele mawhai fo i ona mawai le silafia ma le iloa e whai ei le whai unga le tangata i le anga i lumanai. O te whiapsile tuala Fuimaono. What are you most proud of when you reflected ilo legacy as a pioneer?
People like you. People
like
no, honestly, like I've had a real privilege. This is how I explain it, Joanna. When I was a charge nurse at the psychiatric unit in Oakley, Carrington, my number one priorities was patients and their families. And then I left and went teaching in the 1983. My priority became students. The students were my priority, and really the challenge was to get Pacific students as professors, and that I'm very proud of. Then, of course, you have the NEVA program. But it was really the highest, for me, the the achievement is the differences that my work has done to people's lives. And it's not just in mental health, but also in sexual health. I'm absolutely deeply touched when people say, people said, you don't remember me, but you did this. And because I don't, to me, that's what the legacy is the changes in people's lives. And that is the best. It's but you see some exciting, but people have made changes, and you're going to be changed. But the other side to this, Johan, I'm also recognizing for the difficulty for people like yourself. I turned 76 this year, and I'm going to easily die. I'm not going to be here very long, and that's one of the reasons why I wasn't here. But it's really the hardship that you also have in the future, but also to know that you're following other people and you're leaving a legacy for other people to follow. I'm only following a pathway, and part of that is the pathway to you're always finding your way home. Because your home sometimes changes all the time. It's like physically, like I grew up in Taufusi, and then Taufusi to Central Auckland, to West Auckland, Auckland, Palmerston North, Palmerston to Wellington here. So the pathway to the physical home is there, but also the spiritual home. Like when I go to Samoa, our house is no longer there, but the first place I always go to, Leota and I go to, we go and get our car, my flowers, and then I go to Mangiangi to see my grandparents and my auntie who laika oko i ngai Mangiangi. And then I do my other work. So that's when you talk about spiritual, that's for me, it's a spirituality because I'm home, and that's the home for me. So it's saying to you that I really value this time that you and I, because I know that you're going to make huge differences in the future. And I'm just been so joyful that I was part of this journey. So
thank you so much. Okay, loawia mo mautinoa as a Samoan mental health nurse. Ia mal Pacifica nurses. What te le lau sao i le atina e na o mātou la nei le fatua o mai tonu o le practice. Ke leo shu se feel. We were trying our best, but thank you for being a mentor for us. Taluaila na e mentioninga ia le group leo whawhawhine Fuimaono. I say wai whawhawhine le tato community Samoa.
I was reading some very interesting research studies, and it's really and it was a really good take on this. Now, there's been always interested in the meka ole gay gene. It was true in the 80s that when was there such a thing why people are born or people are made. And the gene shows, and it was a really interesting research from America, was that when times of great need or like war or anything, that the women, the mothers, tend to produce like a hormone, and the children or the male are more likely to be somebody gay or whawhawhinge, who is a male, but they're usually a lot more gentler. And they're not sort of and so nature has a way of saying that what you're needing is somebody who will nurture, not rather warlike, because this is the time when people, like different kind of people are required, who will nurture family. And I think the biggest role that whawhawhinga that, what I believe we have, is that role in families. It's in Angola, ko singo makua, and for me, as I said to you, my own personal thing, and when people said to me, one of your questions is, well, I was familiar with so I'm familiar. Caring to me, or is very caring for me. I'm familiar with it. And just like every other Samoan. But ole winga o kala. So to go back to the whawhawhinga, because you find that the role of whawhawhinga, I believe, is in the caring. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, because it's families. Well, some people say, oh, that's like a domestic. No, but to me, that's our power. That's or the tausinga. I really like the work of Sister Shawolia or Sister Vitolia Moa. You know, she does about tosi. You know, tosi is tosi ainga, tosi soifua, tosi fanua, tosi, all that. It's a concept of tosi. And I really believe that, you know, for some of us, like Farafinians, have a natural inclination towards that sense of gentleness and power and really caring, but really in particular relationship with their families and particularly their mothers and sisters. So that's one. I think also for our thing, it's time, the context and the time environment has changed. Like there's a lot of, we know that in New Zealand, for instance, that we have had, you know, politicians, we have doctors, we have nurses. I think this we're prominent amongst nursing Samoa. Mrs. Samoa, I think it's quite a natural because they tend to look after families. It's a very important faction of Samoan society. Yeah, those of us also, then of course our families, because of our role as society, then of course then some of us hold titles. Like I belong and all of us, bar one, is we all have titles. You know, all those kind of names. It's because that's what our family, because our roles has come through our families. And kosingo or family to me, and especially the kosingo makuma, kosingo ainga, it's the highest form of recognition for a Samoan.
Oh. Ia wai ka ke whaalongoa fo inga le e iei fo i pei fo i o le mental health e iei ale kusikusi lima le o isi kangaka i le pei whaese ia whawhawhine mai le kako community i le ka whaalongo le iei. So o le asa o whautuanga mo le community whawhawhine i le addressinga la ia o tuenga negative ia.
Okay, let me...
Yeah.
Sorry, Jan. This came about during the time in the 80s. I really got to know some of the churches. They quote the Bible, the Old Testament. The Old Testament. And yet we know for history, in history, you'll find there's whakawhine engaged throughout history. We know that in the Greece. We know that in Jesus' time there was. We know that because it's a note that one of the disciples. We understand that. What I always say to Whaafinga is this: before the missionaries came, around about 1830s, when the missionaries came to Samoa, Whaafinga existed. And why do we know Whaafinga existed? Because there's early recordings of Mahu, which is Whaafinga from Tahiti, Hawaii. Every island had their own, o le aukonga o le Whakawhawhine, or Whakaleiti, which is Whakalady now, or le Cook Islands, or le Akawa'ine, or le Whakawhawhine Niue, or le Mahu o Tahiti. These people actually existed before the missionaries arrived. So what I always say, before the Christians came, the Samoans had the Whawhawhine. And indeed, we had this discussion with Tuputam Sese. And he said that even Mukalaanga or Moji Ainga, Mama, but you find the big titles. But because of the colonization now with the Christian things, you have a value. Christian values is Parangi, it's more Israelites, and versus Samoan. And that's where the conflict is. Because under the Samoan, Whawhawhine is part of that ainga. O le ronga mo whaafinga o kausinga mo ainga, malako if wanga lengla, ka fo kausinga ainga, well, you can't. If wanga le oisi, they get married, they lead their family, o le kausinga makua maiskanga. But so that point is always there. But we always had that in Samoa. Because early recordings from particularly from Palangi writings, there's allusion to the Whaafinga, which is wrong because some of the church ministers are saying, "Oh, it didn't exist until the." That's rubbish. We know that Whaafinga existed. It's way back because the earliest sign is was from a ship log in 1768 that recorded a mahu. That they thought it was a woman, but it was a mahu. So it was before that at the time. So historically, That's what I would say to whakawhingers. No, we have a place in Samoa. How that place is to be determined is between you and your family, because some whakawhine are not, rather than caring for their family, they care for them in a different way, like having, a lot of them are very, very senior in Samoa, in government, in law, in medicine, in nursing, and things like that, and they can contribute to the family. But historically, I just wanted to say that whakawhine existed. And why we know we existed, because there was a name called whakawhine. That was a Samoan term. Homosexual is a medical term, but whakawhine is a Samoan term. So we know that because the other cultures also have a character like that. O le akawai no Cook Island, o le mahu, they record it.
So ua tele lo finagalo Fuimaono I le e fōlinga mai o le history, e tele le history o whawhawhine tono o le tatou atunu. Ia e peila e to e mai ala I le galuega tāua I tono o le mental health. E tele nei tamaiti, ma tangata e whawhawhine. E awhia o la tō mafaufau e be stress, e depressed, me whapena. Ona o le acceptina I totonu o lato ainga, o le malama fo I ma le aise openness fo ina le talia I lato o lato o whawhawhine me whapea. Kusa la o vailo le stress ma le anxiety. Le la leina o mai I le tono mental health, a le te whaalongo tu I lau saunoanga. E tele le talaanga ma le au ngā o whawhawhine. They are a big part of our culture, tatou community.
They're part of the culture because ele ese la ko upul whaparangi. They had a word called invert. Invert, and then homosexual came under it was around about 1940, 50 that the word homosexual came in. That was the name. But whawhawhine existed in Samoa well before 1830s.
Okay.
They were before Mahu, so there was a history. But like colonization came in and they wiped it off. See, and it's not just the whakawhine that was affected, also the role of women. Because we know, for instance, that the first, because Fuimaono comes directly from Kama Kamiki o le Kama Salamasingo e Tapumanga ia. Ngo mai ko inga mai whalea lili kita pakula le Kama whaunga Salamasinga. And we all know that Salamasinga was the first tupu Samoa. But a lot of people don't want to know that. They say that Salamasinga or the sister or Maliakoa, because that's what the colonizers, they wiped all the women out. And the role of women, because we know that women in Samoan society held major titles, but after the colonizers came, the women were reduced and the men were up.
Yeah. So e te lea la leo ngā ole ta talanoaga fo I le whaafonga mai ale tatou atunu. We brought up mental health, mental illness, and then link it with a different aspect of the kako culture. Ma mea whapea, e sao leila sao noanga.
Well, o meo ke popolei on el mele o whawawhinga and some of the gay things, because of the suicide. It's highest amongst gays and rainbow. Pero o mele kupus whawawhinga lenga was awful lenga front page o le Observer. Luckily, the Samoan Whawawhinga Association, le susunga Alex Ua, who's a lawyer, they objected and they removed it because it was disgusting. You wouldn't have your family hanging picture. But the point is that a lot of the churches, fundamentalist Christians, especially new churches here, they come in with a very palangi method. That's not Samoan, Johan. I have a very strong view on that. Because during the homosexual law reform, we had that kind of Western, very much right-wing type. It's not like the traditional Catholic. It's very different. This has got the new charismatic church. It's very, very right wing. And that's also happened in Tonga and Fiji and Samoa. So, but it's against our culture. No. Samoa, we had whakawhingas well before the 1830s when the missionaries came.
Okay.
And they existed not just in Samoa, there was also throughout the Pacific.
Yeah.
But now that's why people like yourself, Joanna, it's very good, like academics. See, we've got academics. And now they're doing the writing. And so they've taken, I love this, or the foul. See, they foul because now they've got Fafin doing their masters. So saying, well, hold on a minute, here it is here. Because I've read some of their brilliant studies. So all of it is to make sure that it's not about promoting sort of, no, it's not. It's just say, we are Samoans.
Yeah.
We're not the same. Not all the Samoans are the same. We are different. But that's like a beautiful bouquet. That makes Samoan beautiful. It's all different bouquets. Unless you're blue or red or green or that's it's every beautiful color.
Yeah. Kasi almenka ko bo mai umai. Kasi le kungu.
Samoa's very inclusive. And you hear people say, in those years ago, you know, you never hear Fa'afing being kicked out like you hear mothers say, it's like a sin. That's where it's really different. Yeah. So those are kind of messages I would like to give to Fa'afing, where for their mental health, but for all Samoans. It's not just the area of Fa'afing, but also we have young people who have trouble with sexuality because this thing about, you know, unplanned pregnancies. See, I worked in that area. A lot of the kids that were unplanned pregnancies, it's because they lack knowledge. They didn't have the access and information. See, and then they're being turned on when they, you know, people experiment. But knowledge is power.
Yeah.
We know that. But for some reason, there's a real thinking coming out, Samo, that you exclude the knowledge, those people. To me, that is absolutely wrong. The people have to have information to make decisions, whether you're in Samoa or in New Zealand.
Ia nga. Sa olele ia. Malo sa noa.
Malo.
Oia, fōlinga mai le tā talanoaga tele iau tiute. Tele fo ilo sila fia malo wiloa malo experience. Ia o te fia iloa la Fuimaono. How are you looking after your mental health?
Keiloa, o sea, you know, we've been together about 43 years. Fasu koko sanga mafu ngofu. And soifua ngai umako ia lo mea ngofu ngai crisis. O kile fifi kele ngengu. But for me, how do I look after my mental? I love reading. And I love reading things more kala ango kiskank samo fo ngale. So I love reading. I write sometimes. I'm a lazy writer, Joanna. I want to write all sorts of things. I always say that I want to write gay-ish romances because that seems to be the notch. But I like to write fiction, and I was saddened that yesterday that one of my favorite writers passed away. Writing, I love the new writers coming through, like playwrights. Most of them are Samoans. They're really dogmatic. Karl Miller, you know, all those kind of. But I love writing. I love reading. I love going to the movies, and I love the theater. After our meeting today, I'm going to go and have a practice, then I'm going to brighten up my hair and my look, and because I've got to do a workshop next week. Yeah, and also the other thing I'm trying to cut back. My favorite Samoan food is karumale poi masimba. But I know it's the wrong thing to, and I know, don't tell me about the theory. But I also I've got to be honest, I enjoyed this, like this. Just talking to people like you, Joanna, just gets my thinking going. So, whamano, whakaila, ngea ngoa, la susunga fo mai Dr. Joanna Mudpola.
O ngai o lele iale, ia iau o ia wala e look after ilo mental health. Ole ala what are your plans in the future ole Fonofale Model?
I think Fonofale Model is going to have a lot more audience. I think the Fonofale is out there for people to use. To me, it was out there for the lots and lots of people using it, and that's what excites me. I hope everybody has, but I hope there's more people can use it for themselves, or they'll adjust it accordingly. But yeah, That's my dream. It's out there to be used.
Ia Malaysia mea not only ngā ole mention I health reports ma mea whapenga I kokongo le health. Wala I loka ika experience. Ngā ole mention, Fonofale Model mention, it's mentioned everywhere.
Yes.
I kongo reports, kongo strategic plans and all of that. Ia ole manga ia incorporate into the practical application of the care. Pe o mea yang kakalangoa I ngei, mea uma yang kakalangoa. Yeah, in practice.
In practice. It's because, since then, because the Fonofale was in 1985, and then the Seitapu, the cultural clinical competence, because remember I was involved in the cultural safety movement on nurses, and that was in 2006. So it's a combination of those three. When you're asking the question, like I think the Fonofale it's much better as an assessment model. The Kalisi is very good for operationalizing the Fonofale model. And the Seitapu is really looking at the cultural competence, clinical of the person using the models. Having some understanding. You had to understand the ngangana, the language. You got to understand the ethics of any organization you're working from. You also got to understand. So it's really about when you're working with more families. If you were working with, say, a Samoan family, according to the Seitapu, and I love using. I'm a colorful person, so I like. Colorful for lo say why just say lo wow, it's in a sacred place. That to me is so. If my message, don't be boring. That's what my friend Lisa Corley, when she was alive, she said, Karl, don't ever blend. If you're gonna blend, be like a curtain, and don't be boring. Be colorful. She was the one that calls me colorful. So be colorful in your work. And that means that, you might be pushed back from, but it stands. It stands. So for me, all the things that you mentioned, which I'm very grateful, but it's not me. It's the people who made it work. I just put it out there, and I'm just grateful to those people and they've taken it to the next level. Like those people, it's developing in nursing education, but it's taken it to other areas. And I suppose, Johannes, it'd be like yours. Your work is going to be there, but I'm really excited because you're one of the very few Samoan who's working solely in mental health. A lot of them work in general, but mental health, but also at your level. I can't think of a Samoan at your level, not a Samoan mental health nurse.
So, mana ia ole whaawau pe ole galuega, le na amata mai e lau fionga le galuega le advocating na mo tatou tangata e totonu o le mental health i nei a kungu o ngiusila ia le lai whaapopo ia ma Dr. Leota Lisi Petaia because she's the only psychiatrist, Samoan psychiatrist mo tatou. Talosia ia to'atele le au wa o to'atele au o kākou foi le e alangainga le support mo ngai o kakukangaka I kokongo le soifua maloloina ia o le tele foi le o le silafia o nai o tatou tangata i le nei a mata upo le soifua o le mafaufau ma le ngase o le mafaufau ia o la ofisili mulimuli a Fuimaono. Kaluai o le pioneer o le na e mua angalua I tonu o le nei atunu o tele foi ia matatia wa e ausia I lo soifua tautua o se tausi soifua Samoa. O le asa ufautuanga mo tausi soifua la itia Samoa le fatua o mai tonu o le nursing I le anga I lumanai.
I've been thinking about that because some of the kokelo of necessary we teach. Afape we kuhu we fape o Samoa or nurse. The first thing you do is then you gotta front up. I will le lo Samoa when it suits. Because I know there are a lot of people like that, and let's be honest, you do as well. Because being a Samoan has a yonga roots. It's about the service. That's when you really have to really find out. You could be a New Zealand born, or you could be a very Samoan, a very newborn, or you could be from Samoa. Everybody has to have that really, what does that mean to be a Samoan mental health nurse? And where does that going to take you? But also for you personally, because I hear people say, oh, I'm very passionate about, and I have to tell you, he's going, oh, we all get on the boat and we all get, sometimes I don't want them on the boat because you'll sink the boat, get them off. No, but what I'm saying is that it's a real personal journey and you can't impose. I know what it took me. There was some very, very joyous time, but there was also some very, very hard times. And I choose not to go there because it just would not do any harm. At the end of the day, Joanna, it's about your own integrity. What are your you believe in? The other one that's very strong is Fuimaono. Pepelo to me it's not based on a lofa. Or pepelo. Don't call it anything else. So it's really about Fuimaono, fa'aloalo, lofa, but also kosi ainga. And that has a very different meaning of the thing. But it's also lofa. One of the, people will say, but lofa, and but you then. Having said that, then that's all you have to put it in practice. So people say, model of practice. Fa'aloalo, lea lofa, kausi ainga, kausi lea kua, wharangungu. Those are my practices. Those are my model of practice.
Malo, tele se o ngā mō mātou ia me se vaega laiti fia follow up your footsteps. Ai maua foi le achievement wa mau e laua fionga e mita foi le anganga i le o se role model foi le mo tātou Samoa ia mai se lava ia le tamatanga luenga tātou matanga luenga o mental health sa ola sa noanga tau le ai ni se o tātou i le matanga luenga ia ala uloa ia tasi lua tangata ia walava lea e tau avea ia ala uloa wa avea le nei por kalame me ole la atili aina to tele tato kulupu e o mai e fia i le ngata o le clinician or a mental health nurse or a doctor or whatever ia te lela to iloa ia o le situ ia wa iloa mo sila fia I fo ele tato atunu ia le ale me o le mental health o le ale me o le mental illness ia tau fai tutusa o mai pe ona e sau noa e tau tato wo fatasi le clinical culture tau tato wo fatasi o te loa ia au si ai se community fia ia manuia ia malesi lea ia loa lava ele tangata ia vai le lelo na ia soifua maloloina o le mafaufau le ngata ia e whapea ia lona ia ainga. Ia pe ese si mata upo te fia sau noa ia wha umameta por kalame Fuimaono.
Ioanga, I just want to say to you, there's very few of us, but if you kept pay for we've got all mental health units. We have mental health models, yourself. There are mental health nurses, but there's only few of us. Sometimes you don't need that. Sometimes what you have is the right people. And the right people that's what's your own personal integrity, but also the vision. Well, when I think of all the money that has gone to things like diabetes, chronic diseases, Pacific Diabetes Unit, Pacific, So we're going to also congratulate people like yourselves that's just really pushing it to that level. We have to, Joanna, because sometimes we forget the thing we've come from. But my last point is this, that sometimes the problem may not be you, it's the fact that what you're promoting is ahead of its time. And my point is this, look, Joanna. It was only some years ago that Ministry of Health, the World Health Organization, came out with this so-called thing like there's no health without mental health. Joanna, Samoans knew that from a long time. We had the Fonofale who said that. We had it. That's the point I'm making. That sometimes what you're developing now, maybe it's a bit ahead of its time, and the time will come. When I developed it in 1985, I never imagined that now we have all these people doing it. All I did was just to share. I just said for people to use. It's the people who took it to the next level. And so it's a word of encouragement, not only to you, but those people who get put back from lack of funding, lack of understanding. Sometimes your work, your timing. And what I learned is it's just that. Sometimes your timing, it's a bit ahead of its time. And you'll find people will come back and you laugh when you say, oh, suddenly there's all the... And one of the things that I always mentioned was the fact that when I did my general, we had this plastic surgeon from, I think, Middlemore, was going, how wonderful, all this kind of thing. And they were talking about how during the war, this brilliant guy found out that the brilliance of using saline, because the pilots who were shot down and landed in salt water, they healed because of the salt. And that was the finding. And I said, Samoans have used saline for hundreds and hundreds of years. Without exception, I remember. We used to lie. It's a idea for when you watch the kids online. Like, or come make for Someone's had it. So I'm saying is sometimes, what we told as those ancient things for Samoa, the Samoans knew that from a long time. And so that's why I don't ever get put back. Just the fact that, that maybe the work you're doing now is foundation for the future.
Ole atu le whaaftaitele lau fionga Fuimaono, mo le whaavanoina o lau taimea tā. Pitu sili ona tāua tā te whaasoai, ia matai fo ile season 3 o le whaungangana podcast. O lau a fionga, o le te le lau sila fia ile area le a tātou o le mental health. Ia o se mea alofa fo ilea mo le tatou atunu ua o te iloa ele o iloa tele le tatou atunu le Fonofale Model. Ia manei mea uma ia ao mea sili o lea ua whaafonga msilisila le tatou atunu ile tele o lau tautua. Mo le tatou atunu e ala i lau galuega. Ia ai whaamalo whaafitai. Whaafitai lava i lau whaafonga mai. Talitonu ua iese au ngā o whaamatalanga mo oe male ainga. Mo nisi whaamatalanga, pe fia whaailoa sau finagalo le tatou porkalame, fesoasoani mai le emaili, joanna@faunganganapractice.com. Po le asiasiane i le website a le faunganganapractice.com. Tatou toe whailoa i le porkalame o so mai, manuia ngaluenga o whenga iei malmamalo le tatou atunu, soifua mai a manuia.